This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by MacPaw, the makers of CleanMyMac 10. Your Mac as good as new. Find out more and download your copy at macpaw.com/podcast. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is the second part of our conversation with Adam Engst of TidBITS, celebrating TidBITS' 30th anniversary of email publication. In the first part, Adam talked a little bit about how TidBITS started, the content management systems they've used over the years, and how it's affected what you saw in TidBITS and on the web. He also talked about pioneering advertising on the internet and a whole lot more. This time around, we get into a few other things, again, continuing the evolution of TidBITS and some of how TidBITS has inserted itself into the community, somewhat unintentionally, and of course, the inevitable plans for the future. So with that, here's Adam. So email, the email thing, it makes a certain amount of sense because
email's king.
It is, and I agree with that. And I keep, every few months there's a wave of articles that goes around that email's dead, and it's like, no, I don't think so. Not where I live. I mean, there are things that definitely supplement it. There are things that have replaced or added as an alternative. But I don't see anything that's replacing it now or in the near future.
I like Slack. We don't have a TidBITS staff list anymore. We use Slack. It's way better. Don't get me wrong. I love Slack for that kind of stuff, but email is where it happens. And I think the other comment I've made about email, and again, this was probably 20 years ago when email started to be predicted, that email was dead, long live something else. And I'm like, email is the cockroach of the internet. You can't kill email. There is just no way to kill email. It's survived spam. I mean, it survived AOL, for goodness sake. So,
yeah, that's a good point. And
I still remember one Macworld, Chuck Schotten, the guy who wrote Mac HTTP, which is the first web server for the Mac, and then WebStar for Star 9, came to Macworld with a T-shirt that said, "The internet is full, go away." I still want that T-shirt.
Yes,
and because it's always true, right? No matter how much more happens, the internet is still full, go away.
Yeah, and I remember some of the old TidBITS sites, and I guess one of the big challenges for you was the volume of stuff that you publish. I mean, because every week you publish back then and now you publish a fair amount of content, and that mounts up pretty quick.
Yeah, I have to look. We have somewhere around 15,000 articles across all that time, and it's probably, actually that's about right, because 15,000, because we're at 1,500 issues of TidBITS, and I would say we probably average roughly 10 articles a week. Many of those are small. Our watch list items are a paragraph, our extra bits are a paragraph. Some articles are only a few paragraphs. Many articles are 5,000 words. But what we found interesting actually is that we're in what I would call an uncomfortable middle. So if you're the New York Times, you go to the New York Times website. They have a fabulous design. They do a great job because they publish hundreds of articles a day. Similarly, if you're a blogger and you publish a couple articles a week, no problem. There's tons of ways of providing that amount of content and designing around it and distributing it and all that. But when you do 10 articles a week, it's actually a little awkward. It's, because you don't want stuff to disappear too quickly on your homepage. And so you're always trying to figure out, how do you keep the homepage fresh while still, not losing the important stuff. If you publish a great article on Tuesday and then 5 small things on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you don't want them to push your great article to the bottom instantly. So, all these interesting design problems that we've dealt with. I think our current site actually does the best at that. And part of the way we solved that was by making our watch list items, which are all software updates, they just get icons in a horizontal grid. And so that they don't take up very much space, and they can be fairly high up, but and they also provide a really nice graphical element that breaks things up, while not getting in the way of the bigger, longer articles.
Yeah, and here we go. That's another rat hole we can go down as far as design goes. Web design, and newsletter design. Now, again, with email, it's a little bit easier because you guys are pretty much stuck with some variation of text.
Yes.
You have never gone in for the HTML emails or anything like that.
Well, we do
And
now. I mean, the current
so.
issue is pretty well formatted. And basically anything we can do on the web, with the exception of embeds. So like we can on the web, if we put a YouTube video in an article, you'll see the video, but on the email version you won't. Same with like a Google form. And that's just because you can't do that in email. HTML in email is still a horrible rat's nest of hurt. And so, but no, our current emails are pretty good that way. That said, they're relatively simple still because you can make a lot of mistakes in HTML email that will make it unreadable on one platform or another, or just too hard to deal with. So the decision we made was full text. So all the text of every article is in every issue, and full formatting other than these embeds. But that means that we keep the formatting simpler than we might do otherwise. So we don't do a lot of tables. We could do tables, but tables are a royal pain to do anyway. So that kind of stuff. But it's a little bit like poetry. If you're maintaining that you have to keep a certain rhythm or meter or line length or whatever, it gives you structure to write into. Whereas if you can do anything, it just gets too hard. And don't get me wrong, you look at the New York Times, actually a perfect example. They do some amazing things. I mean, they have stories that are fully interactive, or, Joanna Stern at the Wall Street Journal did a wonderful piece mocking the butterfly keyboard, where you could click switches that would show you what it looked like because she couldn't actually type an N key. Because her N key was broken. And then it was the E key was broken. You could click another switch to see what her article looked like without the E. It was total gimmick, but it really hammered home just how bad that keyboard was. And we can't do that stuff. We just don't. We can write an article.
Yeah, but that to me is the strength of TidBITS, and I'm not saying this because I'm sitting here talking to you. Again, you don't go for the gimmicks. It's, oh God, I'm going to date myself, but the Wendy's commercial. Where's the beef? Well, the beef is in TidBITS. Because all the flashy stuff is out there, and you could do it if you really wanted to spend the time and the money, but does it really create that lasting impression? Will that article be relevant a year from now?
So
2 years from now.
When Tanya and I were at Cornell, we were on the staff of, at first, and then the editors of a literary magazine called the Risley Review. And what we did with the Risley Review was, our big thing was, we actually made the inside of it digital using PageMaker. And we actually worked on we didn't have a computer that could run PageMaker, of course, but Cornell had one with a full page display. Remember the portrait displays? I love those. Those are great. So we actually laid out the entire issue in PageMaker. And then what the previous editors had done is we had a hand press. So our covers were lino cuts for graphics plus hand set type. Lead type, and we had a press given to our dorm, the Risley Residential College, by the New York Times after they moved away from hand presses. And so we would actually do the covers via hand press and the inside via the absolute latest digital techniques. And it was, that's kind of partly where we got our start in publishing. But the reason why I'm telling the story is the previous editors, Jeff and Susan, whose last names I can't remember, had done in their hand press experimentation and everything. They had printed up these wonderful broadsheets that had the sentiment, "We're word people. We own this language," on them. And I loved that. That it was just like that so completely summed up what we did. And because we're word people. So yeah, we have graphics now, but we're word people. I mean, honestly, the graphics, most of the time I have to think, oh, we should put a graphic here. I'm not thinking in graphics. I think in words. And what I write evokes images, and I see them in my head. And so I add graphics because I am aware that it helps people. It's not what I would do naturally.
So does that mean that you would throw out graphics from TidBITS if you could, or?
No, I mean, it helps people. I won't disagree with that. But when push comes to shove, I do not write something thinking here's that I'm writing this to introduce this illustration. I am always just writing, and then I go back and I think, oh, this would be more understandable if you could see what I was talking about. So, I mean, how many books do you read that have pictures? Most books do not have pictures. I understand we're running technical documentation in essence. So yes, it has screenshots, it has pictures, but that's not how I think about the world. I think about the world in text, in narrative. And so, yeah, I'm a word person.
I think we just got some insight into your personality there. No, I mean, and I mean that because it does reflect the history of TidBITS.
Yeah.
That you have not gone for a lot of graphics. I mean, I know when you watched the WordPress version of the site, it was kind of a shock because there were now images and things that had not been part of TidBITS up to that point.
Yep.
I mean, other than the occasional screenshot or whatever, but it had not been a sort of a baseline kind of thing.
Well, and actually, even just look at the TidBITS logo. The TidBITS logo has always been the word TidBITS. That there have been occasional graphical elements that go with it. We've designed it 4 or 5 times over the years, but in essence, the word TidBITS with the uppercase bits is our logo. And when we designed a logo for Take Control, actually, we didn't do that. Take Control, the logo was very much Gear Guy, and we were trying to evoke something different. But TidBITS, nope, TidBITS is text. And I mean, for the longest time, it was a little ironic because we started in HyperCard where it was actually much more visual because the HyperCard stack had some graphic elements to it. It had interface to it and everything like that. But once we went to CText where it was straight 7-bit ASCII text. I mean, it took us a long time to even do things like bullets, for goodness sake. We did asterisks because that was what we wanted to do. So, so we have this incredibly long plain text history. And honestly, when we switched to WordPress and lost our plain text version of our email newsletter, I got some complaints. And I'm like, yeah, sorry. There's a limit, that it actually was hard to put out that plain text version because it had hard wrapped lines, right? It had lines that were 66 characters long.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, because that's what you did with that kind of stuff. So we actually had to. One of the tasks in putting out the issue was to look for really bad line breaks because every now and then there'd just be some edge case that would confuse the algorithm and it would do a bad line break. And so we've done character level editing on TidBITS for so long, and so when people complained, I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, but I just can't do that anymore.
Well, it's like everything else. At some point, you have to move on. I know that there are people. I mean, we all dislike change. We get comfortable with something, but at some point, if you don't move on, then you're going to be wedded to that forever and left behind.
It's absolutely true. And honestly, that's what our readers want. I mean, one of the things that every 5 or 10 years we do a reader survey, and the resounding command from readers is, "We like what you're doing. Don't change it." That. The surveys almost never tell us anything we didn't know. The most useful information we've gotten from a survey, was a couple two ago, was that people did not want to read about games. that Josh Centers had joined us as managing editor. He had a gaming background and liked to write about it, and and I had already guided him towards I'm pretty sure our readers are not going to be doing first person shooters. That's not going to be where they're into it. So we aimed more at the kind of more interesting puzzly games, or something where if you didn't grow up gaming, you would be able to get into. It wouldn't be too hard to control. Whatever. Nope. People that are just not interested. And wow, okay. But pretty much everything else is, we like what you're doing, keep it up. And which is good and bad, right? It's good because you know what to do. You got your marching orders. It's bad in the sense of it's fun to do new things every now and then, and I just not getting a lot of love on the new things. So I one of the questions in our last reader survey was if people were interested in us doing like a podcast or YouTube video series, something like that. The resounding answer was So okay, not going to say I'm not going to do it. I don't know that if we had asked people if we were going to do Take Control, if they would have said, yes, we really want you to do ebooks. It's just like Steve Jobs says, you don't ask people what they want, you give it to them. But at the same time, there is a level to which you do want to make sure that it's something your audience is interested in getting. And books were definitely there back in 2003, but videos and audio now, not so much. Okay, no problem.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by MacPaw, the makers of CleanMyMac 10. Your Mac as good as new. Is your Mac slowing down or not operating at peak efficiency? Then it's time to get CleanMyMac 10 from MacPaw. CleanMyMac 10 can help you clean out all that cruft that's been building up in your Mac. Old log files, cache files, email attachments, all those things can slow your Mac down, and they're no longer needed. CleanMyMac 10's Smart Scan looks for them, then lets you decide what you want to keep and what can go, making your Mac faster and more stable. CleanMyMac 10 can also optimize your Mac to improve performance even more, and it can help you review all the apps on your Mac and properly uninstall those you no longer need. CleanMyMac 10 has everything you need to get your Mac running at its best and keep it that way. But that's not going to happen unless you visit macpaw.com/podcast to download the free trial. See what CleanMyMac 10 finds on your system that you don't need at macpaw.com/podcast. That's macpaw.com/podcast, macpaw.com/podcast, for the trial version of CleanMyMac 10. Thanks to MacPaw for their support of MacVoices. Before we wrap up, there's one other aspect of TidBITS that I think that we need to talk about. And that is that you all have, you early on, I don't know if you built the community or if you participated in the community, in the Mac community, in the Apple community. But somewhere there's always been a special relationship between you, your readers, and the community. And there are a few software developers, I think, that have something similar, that you're not just a company and you're not just a publication. Yeah. You're TidBITS. Yeah. And it all folds together. And I mean, was that intentional? Was that, do you think, just the nature of you and Tanya?
It's just the way it happened, yeah. And so one thing to keep in mind is that I deal with people very personally. So I deal with individuals. Someone sends me mail, I'll reply to them. I do not ignore mail. As a matter of course, I may miss an occasional message or something may be too hard to answer easily, and I put it off and whatnot. I'm human, but I basically try to reply to every email message I get, and that has always been true. I have millions of email messages, and so the combination of that and back when we started was the heyday of the Mac user group. I mean, BMUG had 50,000 users or something. I mean, it was crazy big. Every Mac company, from WordPerfect to Microsoft to Aldus to Adobe, showed up at user group meetings. They paid to come to user group meetings. This was such a completely different world, and so we were completely in that world. And we always made, we were very clear. If you want to use user group publications, if you want to use TidBITS articles, just credit us clearly. That was the only requirement. And so we've talked at user groups. The people who tend to run user groups tend to be the people who are more involved further out from their group. And so we'd see people at Macworld, we'd see people at other conferences, and it just became, and also Macworld, Mac User, Mac Week, they've all had great people behind them. But I would challenge most people to associate a single person or two people with any one of those publications. There was turnover. Those were companies. People moved on. And whereas, for better or worse, TidBITS is us. We as TidBITS. And so, for the longest time, the joke among people who write for TidBITS is that I write everything. People don't actually see that other people write for TidBITS. We're really clear about our bylines. We try hard to be clear about bylines, but people just assume that I write everything. And so, there's something about that personal connection, which I think means that TidBITS is as much a creature of the community as a supporter and documenter and, whatever. TidBITS is of the community, supports the community and is of the community.
And I think that's a big secret to the 30 years, and to the loyalty. You and I have talked a number of times about the loyalty of your readers and your audience, and there have been 20 dozen publications, print and online, distributed however you want to list, that have gone, and we all look back at some of them fondly, and TidBITS just trudges on.
And the reason why we trudge on from a business perspective is that we have some 3,500 readers who are contributing money completely voluntarily to keep us going. We don't ask for a specific amount. We don't put anything behind a paywall. It's not a subscription. If you give us $20, you get the same little benefits as if you give us $50 or $100 or $1,000. Well, if you give us $1,000, we'll have dinner with you. But realistically, we'd probably have dinner with you otherwise. But we promise the $1,000. We'll try to have dinner with you, and we've done it a few times. I mean, it's been big fun. But it's I think what we've made clear is that we're all in this together. That TidBITS is never going to be a big company. I remember when CNET got its start, and that was back when we were in Seattle, and I was sort of thinking, I could do this. Sort of like I know how to run what's necessary to do something like CNET. And it was also at a time where, I was busy writing the books and various other things. And I was like, I don't want to. I don't want to be a publisher who manages a large staff. But, at the time, I don't think it would have been in the slightest bit difficult to get funding, to, have offices, all that kind of stuff. And we intentionally decided not to. In some sense, it was an easy decision. Don't get me wrong. It would have been much harder to do that. But I think we could have done it. And I do remember having a conversation with the guy who ran Northwest Nexus, our internet provider, because we had put him on the map in a really big way. I mean, people called Northwest Nexus from Japan because it was cheaper to pay for the international phone call than it was to get internet dial-up access in Japan. So, they went gangbusters. And so he was telling me, and he was a business guy. So he said, he had this analogy of, at first, you've got the, like the $10,000 loan from friends and family, and it's like walking a line on the road. And then you got the $100,000 loan because you need to grow the business, and you're servicing it right. I mean, the business is doing well. You're doing all the right things, but now you're on a balance beam, and then you've got the $1 million loan. As then, for the next ramp up, and now you're on a tightrope between two buildings, 100 feet up, and your biz dev guy and your chief of marketing are feuding with each other on your freaking high wire, and it wasn't that they were doing badly. They weren't. They were doing everything they should have done. They were borrowing money, leveraging it appropriately, paying their debt, growing the business, and I think he had some real, he was not necessarily happy about how it had worked out, that he he not so much that it like the business was going well, but he didn't enjoy what he was doing as much.
Right.
And so, for better or worse, we've always kept TidBITS, and when we were doing it, Take Control, very personal, because that's how we like doing things. And I think you lose that when you become a company. If you could be replaced, then you're not that's a different sort of business. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not the kind of business we've ever really been good at. And you saw when we sold Take Control, the only one who could sell it to was Joe Kissel, who was basically the only person who could replace us, because he had such a strong personal brand and connection with so many readers through all of his books. But to this day, I get email from people who don't realize we've sold Take Control.
Yeah, well, I still remember that when you came on that show that day and surprised me with it, and it's like, you did what? What?
Why would you do this?
Well, no, not as much that, but it's just like I'm trying to vision, because it had always been such, from the outside, or at least from my perspective, it had always been sort of a team thing. Yeah. I mean, you and Tanya obviously owned it, and then for you to say, okay, here, Joe, it's all yours, was I mean, it's worked out well, and Joe certainly has done some new and different things, but it just was strange. It was just strange.
Yep. Change is hard.
Yeah.
But, as I said, when I was writing about the 30th anniversary, I can promise that there will be an issue next Monday, and the Monday after that, and the Monday after that, and for every foreseeable Monday after that, until such time where apparently it's not foreseeable. That people have said, oh, here's to another 30 years. And I'm like, I don't know. I'd be 82 when that's another 30 years. I have a feeling it's not going to last another 30 years, but I don't want to say that either way. I'm not going to promise it, but I'm not going to deny it either.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm up for being here in 30 years to talk about that.
I mean, I have to say 50 years is a really even number. Well, that's only 20 more. And I'd only be 72 then. So, that's still conceivable. But the thing is it just, what's most important is it has to stay fun. And I think we actually went through a bit of a rough patch, 4 or 5 years ago, when it just seemed like Apple was doing all this stuff that just, it wasn't even related to why we use the Mac. And I've come to grips with some of that. Obviously Apple TV and whatnot is just whatever. I couldn't care less about Apple TV Plus. I find it utterly irrelevant. But as long as it feels like this is an interesting technical ecosystem to swim in, and we can tell people about cool, interesting things and techniques and solutions to problems, we'll keep doing it. And as long as we can earn a living doing it, obviously. If those 3,500 readers all take up, pack up and go home tomorrow, then probably wouldn't keep going on. But the level of support has been just so astonishing and so amazing that I don't see that happening. I think people are, they really like to have TidBITS, and again, we don't. We've made our peace with we're not going to be millionaires ever, so we don't have to worry about the fact that we just need a salary. We don't need to be rich off of all of this.
Well, there's a lot to be said for that, and there's a lot to be said. I mean, I have so much respect for what you and Tanya have built. I have so much respect for the people that support you because they recognize the value. That's the way that it should be for a business like yours. And unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't work that way on both sides, both the producers and the audience. And so I think there's some congratulations here that go to both sides. And it's a chicken or egg thing. I don't know which one started first,
it's what you build. If you build something that people love, that they can't imagine doing without, they'll support you. And, I had to talk a couple of people down. There were a few people like, oh, I'm 74 and I'm only getting Social Security and I just, I can't do this and I can't afford it. I'm like, please don't give me money. Do not feel bad about this. I am so happy you're reading TidBITS. If you're in your 70s and still enjoying what we do and it's helping you keep your mind working and do good stuff, that's so much more than than is necessary. And so, yeah, I don't need $20. It's not important. And so that's the kind of thing also that I think, we see when you do see the overall readership as more of a group, of a community. Yeah, some people are doing better than others. And if the people who are doing better want to ensure that TidBITS stays free for those who aren't, we all win. That's how things work in the real world when people help each other. Everyone has something to contribute, and the specific person I'm thinking was 74, and on fixed income and everything. She's a consultant, and she's like, yeah, a lot of my clients have died. She worked with people her own age, and times are tough, and now she can't go out, and she only did in-person consulting. I'm like, you are doing great stuff, and I'm so sorry that business is basically disappearing for you, and so please don't don't worry about me. I will be fine, and and anything we can do. But so that fact that the community can in essence help her keep helping other people, what goes around comes around.
There are a lot of lessons. I hope the viewers and the listeners took some lessons out of this discussion, and go back and look at the history of TidBITS and read the article. And there's a lot of wisdom here, and a lot of things that someone could model. Use this as a model to go forward. Maybe not to build something like CNET or IBM, but to build a nice business for themselves and enjoy themselves. And that may be the biggest bottom line.
And I do think that we're seeing email newsletters making a resurgence. There's a service called Substack. And I've just run across it recently. And you can do a free email newsletter, or you can charge for it. And there's ways of charging, send out some for free and whatnot. I'm like, this is brilliant, because that's, you could, as a single person, if you have interesting things to say, you can build what TidBITS did. Won't be exactly the same, might not be quite as fancy, but at the core, that's what you've got. And you can make it so that people can give you money. You can make it so that they have to give you money if they want to do it, but you have to be good enough at that point. So, but so many of these things, the internet is so large now. There's so many possibilities that you just have to do a good enough job and get the word out such that people come to you, and then you don't need that many of them to actually be helping out to earn a living. That's the beauty of it. I say, only, whatever, about 15% of our email subscribers contribute money, and that's more than enough. So, that doesn't even count, web and RSS and all those other people too. So it's just, just thinking about it from an email perspective. So yeah, I always encourage people, if you see a void in the universe, fill it.
T-shirt right there. T-shirt.
If you see a T-shirt in the universe, fill it.
Yeah. Well, that was not. No, that could go so wrong there. Oh, okay. We're going to wrap before it gets any worse than this. Adam, thank you for for this. Congratulations on 30 years.
Thank you.
I really mean, and please send that congratulations along to Tanya. You guys have done an amazing job. And okay, so maybe not. I won't say here's to another 30, but here's to another good solid 20. How's that?
Yeah. Wait till we're 50. Yeah, that's right. 50 years of TidBITS.
Okay.
I don't know. That could be a little much. I'll tell you what, why don't we just check in every year and we'll see how we're going.
We'll check in more than every year.
The 31st anniversary, that's probably, let's see, that would be the external SSD of anniversary.
I think you can look forward, folks, to the article that this generates, the tech anniversary guide or something.
Yeah, and then I think there's going to be the iMac anniversary pretty soon. Definitely need a new iMac.
Okay, well, that's good. I'll be
That'll be the iMac anniversary.
31's the iMac. Okay.
Yeah, 32 is going to be the 49-inch monitor anniversary.
Okay.
You heard about these 49-inch monitors? Have you heard about these?
Not the
There's
Apple
49-inch monitors now. They're the same pixel dimensions as my 227s, and
right.
But it's a single curved monitor.
Oh yeah, the ultra wides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 5120 by 1440 resolution. I might actually consider a Mac Mini instead of an iMac. I mean, I love the Retina display, but I love me Pixels better. So
we'll set up a GoFundMe page for TidBITS 30th anniversary. Buy Adam a monitor.
TidBITS is, the readers really did help a great deal this year for the anniversary. So that was TidBITS as a business is solid again, which is very nice.
That's great. Well, we will do this again, not about the anniversary, but we'll do it about something in the coming months. But thank you so much for the time.
Excellent. Anytime, Chuck. And well before
always a pleasure.
Next April. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. If by some unbelievable circumstance you don't know what TidBITS is or are not participating with TidBITS, go to tidbits.com, find out what we've been talking about all this time and what the rest of us have known for 30 years.
And if you just scroll to the bottom of any article, that's where you sign up for the email part, which is, as we know, email is king.
There you go. Another T-shirt. Another T-shirt.
Email is the cockroach of the internet. Sorry, I got T-shirts all day.
Yeah. A new line of TidBITS wear. I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.